Hey guys, it's Jordan Pacheco from the Glad Trad podcast. Hope you're doing well. And I am fresh off, friends, fresh off one of the most fun experiences I've ever had in my life. Like one of those, hey, when I'm looking back 10, 20 years from now, what was a night that you thought, yeah, this is where life is all right? So happy belated Feast of Christ the King in the old calendar. And to celebrate here in St. Louis, there was a fantastic 100th year anniversary of the commemoration of the feast day celebration that culminated in a ball for the Feast of Christ the King. So I got all dressed up. Maybe you see in the thumbnail, I got my tails on and everything. I'd actually been taking lessons with waltzing, with polka, with all these other kinds of dances for the month leading up to it. And finally, the event came. And I'm actually kind of really sad that it's over. But the reason I wanted to talk about it was not just because it was a fantastic night and just so full of great Catholic culture, but because it also highlights one of the problems that have gone awry in our society, and maybe we can talk about how to better reclaim our culture. I've only been to 2 balls in my life, and so I've only been in coattails really 3 times ever in my life. It was white tie, black tie, ton of fun. I've always loved coattails, and there's just something about the beauty, the elegance of these sorts of things, right? The ladies get dressed up in these very beautiful dresses. A lot of them had these like long gloves on, and we did a lot of different kind of dances. So I learned how to Viennese waltz. I even had some different themed dances that I did. And shout out to my dance partner, but she was extremely wonderful, very wonderful young lady, very elegant as well. That's old ballerina skills for you. So to get dressed up, to see all the beauty, right? And also besides like waltzing and that kind of stuff, we also learned English country dance is a sort of style. So essentially, if you watch Pride and Prejudice, we learned how to do all that stuff too. It was the most Pride and Prejudice cotillion thing I've done in a really, really long, hot second. And man, I had so much fun. And I recognized something, which was that for some people I met, and there were 250 people in this ballroom, so you can imagine this place was packed. But for some of those people, they'd grown up doing this. They'd grown up kind of learning the art of dancing and the art of how to kind of mingle in society in that way. And I think, again, to share authentic Catholic culture. And now I'm very grateful for my upbringing. And I'm very grateful for my parents. I'm very grateful for many of the things that I've been through. But I did not grow up that way, right? We went to dances. There were barn dances, of course, but I was also a public school kid, which meant that I went to homecoming and prom and Sadie Hawkins. And it was a very, very different kind of world. And I think that part of the problems in the world can stem from the fact that there's such a deep contrast in even something like dance with maybe what the wider secular world does and what I think actually authentic Catholic culture should do. So just to kind of start off, let's be real. I grew up, and the kind of dancing that I was doing, especially in public school, was not befitting of the dress that some of these events had, right? You think about wearing a suit to homecoming or a tuxedo to prom, and yet I'm not proud of it, but some of these events, right, we just engaged in really raunchy kind of dancing and really bad music, bad for our ears and certainly bad for our soul. And we started doing that at a very, very young age. So I can think about middle school, right? Especially getting into middle school, and like everybody knew to the window, to the wall, to the sweat, yada, yada. You got a bunch of little 6th graders singing that loud at the top of their lungs. Just music seeped in just filthy, filthy acts of sex and depravity and shots. You got these little 12-year-olds singing about taking shots. There's no reason for that outside of just, purely kind of destroying that childhood innocence. And then even when you'd get dressed up for something more fancy like homecoming or prom, certainly, you wouldn't know any other style of dance than grinding, which I partook in from time to time with my particular dance partners. Not proud of it. In fact, one of my little stories, and I'm still very good friends with her to this day, so it didn't turn out that terrible, but I essentially ruined my own junior prom because I didn't communicate to my date that I was taking my Christian faith more seriously, and I didn't want to grind on her. That didn't seem respectful. That didn't seem right for what now I realize is children. And she took it as I wasn't interested in her. So I had kind of a disaster at junior prom. Very awkward, not a good time. But hey, we live and learn, right? Now to contrast this, again, I now know people who've grown up and they've been able to have these really wonderful, intricate, great dancing skills. And they've been able to do so and have just an absolute blast at all these different kinds of events. And there doesn't need to be such a wide contrast. Like, I'm still of the opinion of this. Yes, I'm a public school kid, but there's no reason why public schools don't have to teach you how to waltz when there's an upcoming ball, right? When there's a particular dance of homecoming or prom. There's no reason why we couldn't learn how to waltz and how to do maybe some more of these like English country dances or line dances or just things that still foster kind of a fun spirit, but are not dirty and are not depraved. And I recognize now, especially because I've just been in a month of practice, as I've said, that that was something that I wish I'd had growing up. I wish I'd had more events like that. I think it's very, very important, especially as a Catholic like me, who's very, very interested in talking about Catholic culture. And that contrast was just very big that night, that there was a lot of catching up that I had to do. And I hope that for my own children, that they can grow up in that sort of spirit. I have some friends right now and I love them to death, and it's all across, right? There's just such great confusion across the culture. I have friends who don't think that you should dance with the opposite sex unless you're married. And there's no distinction of the kind of dance. I'm talking like, I came from like the public school depraved stuff. Don't do that. But this kind of dance, waltzes, very tame kind of stuff. A great way to interact with the opposite sex. A great way to have just a good time all around. And they would not even agree with that. And I hear them, right? Because you probably know them. Some of them are very good friends and it's a little bit of a tongue in cheek thing. But also sometimes I'm like, man, y'all need to like get out of your own heads a little bit, Because yes, I understand. We can trade this particular line of moral theology, the thought of moral theology. We can trade back and forth different things that some saints have said. Now, this may be completely off base. I might be, completely out of line here. Out of line, but I'm right. So take this with a grain of salt. Sure. This is just, of course, this is naturally my opinion, but I'm going to say this. The Catholic Church is a wonderful, beautiful arbiter of culture. She has an obligation to, is not just as a teacher of the world, but obviously by bringing all of the cultures under her fold. I think that it's great when the Catholic Church is a patron of the arts, and being the patron, especially of the fine arts, means that doesn't just include art and movies and cuisine, but it obviously, and fashion, it includes dance as well. And I think that being said, a lot of cultural beats that we have are not just because the church invented them out of thin air, right? The church, again, I think this is all God's plan, was essentially became the dominant force over the pagan Roman Empire, right? It birthed Christendom, but Christendom is built upon the grounds of older Western civilization. The Romans were already there before the Christians, as were the Greeks. And so many of these traditions that we think of, right, the customs that we have, the languages that we speak, a lot of these things, the church didn't have to invent, but it assumed into herself to raise them to a supreme degree. And that includes dance. So how is it that older, more conservative societies had more frequent and really great, good boundaries, rules on good dance? And we live in an era where it's like a pendulum, where it's like, you're either like at the club, like public school dancing, like you're at the club when you're 12 years old, or we're just completely like, nah, dancing is illegal. And if you touch a woman's hand, it's probably a sin. There's no middle ground, guys. Like that's got to be the realm that we operate in. And you're not going to get those kind of cultural perspectives. You're not going to get that exactly from the pulpit, is all that I'm trying to say. But the pulpit can do a lot to foster this thing. So again, at this dance, it was put on by the Institute of Christ the King. And anyone who knows Institute priests knows that they're very big on the liturgy, very big on beauty, very big on reverence and proper dress and all that kind of stuff. So it was great that the canons kind of opened the ball up with a prayer, that they're in their full habit. They got the cape on and everything. And they don't dance, right? Priests aren't allowed to dance, but they certainly gave way to allow for the laity, and they themselves participated. They're able to drink and interact with their parishioners. And I think, again, just have such a great night of Christian camaraderie amongst many different kind of people. It was a great chance for me to make new friends. It was a great chance for me to dance with people I'd never danced before, I'd never met before, and just do so in a really wonderful kind of way. That is a culture I think as Catholics we need to really fight to build up. Society is it's always been a mess. There's never an in the garden moment. There are problems in our time that I think living in a world that's so connected, living in a world of the internet, living in a world that somehow we are more divided, if you will, and more alone than we've ever been, has very unique problems. And the solution, I do think, again, is fostering authentic Catholic culture. This is a huge thing that I talk about on this channel. And there's a big reason, because to combat this feeling of loneliness, we as Catholics have to be able to band around each other, to look at each other as brothers and sisters. And that means not just to interact with each other during Mass or during a rosary or during a nice religious talk, right? A theology on tap. It's also to be able to have fun together, to have leisure together, right? St. Thomas Aquinas talks about the beauty of leisure, right? The importance of it. Man is not just meant to work all the time. Man is supposed to have good, relaxing, and enjoyable leisure as well. And man, I got to tell you guys, like, this ball recharged a lot of my different batteries, physical, spiritual, social, for sure. And it was just beautiful. And I want more of that, not less of that. Sometimes, especially in traditional circles, you have people who, rightly so, they cling to the Mass. They have to. We have to, for sure. And they circle the wagons around the Latin Mass. But they don't realize that the natural step beyond the traditional Latin Mass is the importance of just building, again, that important Catholic community. When I was in Los Angeles, the first parish that the Fraternity of St. Peter was at, very generously, it was being shared with the diocesan priest and parishioners who were there. So our masses didn't overlap, but nonetheless, it wasn't our own space. So there wasn't really a lot of traditional Catholic community. We would go to Mass there. People would come from all over Los Angeles and the surrounding areas, and then they'd kind of leave afterwards. There was no donuts afterwards in the basement. There was no young adult group, nothing like that. Altar and Rosary Society. Only after we got our own place did we recognize that, hey, the liturgy is, of course, the font in which all of this flows, right? The Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. But it's not enough just to go to Mass and then not talk to each other. Our Lord himself decrees, God himself from the beginning decrees, right? It is not good for man to be alone. And it's not always just, oh, we'll get married or die trying. It's also just to foster good camaraderie, proper friendships, and yes, obviously, a wonderful Christ-centered family life. Really big words, just to kind of show that I think that dances like this, that cultural moments like this for the church are beautiful. They're important. It demonstrates that the church is still the patron of the arts, that she is still patron of culture, that she has an obligation, I believe, and a duty as the great teacher of the world, as a great commission that Christ has given us to look after not just the well-beings of things that are inside the parish doors, but those that are outside as well. I wish that I had grown up that way. I wish that I'd had a realization of that. I don't blame my parents. They didn't know any better, right? The kind of dances that we were going to do. I don't blame a lot of things except society at large, I guess. But it's not like, we still have free will in it. And towards the end of high school, I kind of recognized that I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to be seeped in a sex-saturated culture that didn't understand how to properly have interactions between people. And while it cost my junior prom, hey, it went all right for my senior prom, So I've just really been thinking about that, man. Like, I get it. I get that there is a lot of people out there who are so still caught with the importance of the Mass, and it has to be our first and foremost priority, especially as traditionalists. But we should also be looking very deeply into how to rejuvenate our own communities, how to rejuvenate our own parish lives. I talk about this, right? What we can do for our churches, what we can set up, how can we foster healthy interactions between the sexes? I have some friends, they talk about on their own channels, right? The declines of birth rates, the decline of marriages, the difficulty which marriage and friendship is going through right now. I certainly know that. And the solution of it is not just to close off and not for the church to have a voice, but instead to do what the church always does really well, which is to find kind of a proper cultural media via, right? To be able to dispel what is bad or what is improper, but to be able to build up and welcome what is good. It's such a great time. And it was so wonderful. People who had never been to festivities like that before are coming out and really just experiencing a great night all wrapped in the mantle of Christ. You cannot ask for anything better, I don't think. And I just want to encourage you, right? Some of you are kind of figuring out, well, how can I best meet Catholics? How can I best improve myself? I encourage you, if you don't know how, pick up some dancing lessons, man. Learn how to waltz. Box waltzing is really, really easy. Learn the Texas two-step, for heaven's sake. I'm a country boy, so you got to know how to do that, right? Learn a little bit of swing. Like, learn how to have fun without having to do the television, without having to do video games with the bros halfway across the world. Learn how to do fun outside of your house, even if it's not a board game. And then, man, like, seek out stuff in your diocese to do. If anyone's moving to the St. Louis area, I got to tell you, the young adult groups out here are very, very vibrant. There's a ton for Catholics to do out here. And I am so grateful that God has led me here so far, because community has been an extremely important thing, especially here in this current time of my life. And to have that has just been so wonderful. I've been so blessed, so blessed. And so I know that some of you, some of my new friends may watch this video, and I just want y'all know who you are, how grateful I am, how welcoming everyone has been, and how encouraging I think it is that I've met a lot of Catholics who weren't from this local area, that they're going to go back home and have these really positive, great stories. And we're going to see more of that, I hope, right? As the church kind of comes out of her slumber, comes out of this identity crisis very slowly, I imagine that we're only going to see more of these things, not less. There's still plenty of work to do, but it was just so beautiful to sit back and really, again, not just under the mantle of the church, but specifically these great celebrations for the feast of Christ the King. I couldn't ask for anything better. So I'm just grateful to God, and I'm grateful for all of you guys. Thank you all so much for listening. This channel has been such a blessing. It's been so fun just to be able to come and share my thoughts at the end of the day. And that's because you guys listen. So I very much appreciate all of you. Know that I'm praying for you, as I hope you pray for me. And if you've enjoyed this video or any of the other great videos here, please don't forget to like, to comment. Tell me about your own experiences growing up, right? Did you guys come out of the womb waltzing, or did y'all have to kind of be like me and fight tooth and claw for it a little bit more? But I love to hear your comments. If you'd like to support the show further, please check out the Patreon. That's patreon.com/GladTradPodcast, or hit that join button below and go ahead and become a channel member. That every little bit just helps, again, the content, the channel keep growing. We're very, very grateful for all of that. And still more exciting things coming around the corner, friends. So if you're in the St. Louis area, please don't forget to hit me up, especially. I'm around for sure. And until next video, friends, God bless you and may it keep you. Adios.